Hey, I want to talk about something that often gets overlooked when we are doing MMM, and these are the 6 common pitfalls when it comes to MMM. So I'll broadly divide them up into 2 categories, and the categories are simple. So one of them is kind of easy to understand and grasp, and the other one is slightly tricky. Yeah, I will say it's tricky, not hard. If you grasp it, it's kind of easy to understand, but it's kind of tricky to understand at first because there are so many things that go into it. But let's start with the easy ones because we like things to start off easily. So the first on our list is actually data quality issue. Now this is kind of easy to grasp because we've all heard about garbage in, garbage out. Data quality is what matters the most and so on. So it's easy to understand or grasp in our head, but kind of tricky to implement in real world if your marketing mix is particularly tricky and you're looking for various confounders and other things. But data quality issues, at least in our heads, is easy to understand. So as an example, let's say we are looking at Meta ads data. Now there are various places where you can get this data from. You can directly go and get it from the platform Meta, or you can look at other departments within your company, like maybe there's a data department, or most probably there's finance department who's tracking all the spend on Facebook or Meta ads in this case. And there might also be an agency who you're working with who might give you data as well. Now let's say this says 55K and maybe this says 50K and this says 60K. Which one do you trust now, right? So there are all different numbers, and there might be time zone issues and other things that kind of play into this as well. So first thing is data quality issue, sort it out. Usually go for the platform because that's kind of the source of truth. So let's say we are happy with our data quality and we can move this to one place now. So the second one, which is also kind of easy to grasp or understand, is the external factors that might affect our marketing mix. Usually this can also be called as founders. So these are the things that might affect your business or your sales that you can't directly attribute to marketing spend. So things like economy or competitor pricing and even COVID, those are the things that are outside of our control. But those of course had an impact on the sales. So things like these we need to pay particular attention to, and we need to add all these things into our model so that we are able to isolate the effects of each of these variables. And these can also be called as external factors or control variables or confounders. Okay, without wasting much time, let's get to the tricky side now. Let me make some room over here. So the first one that is kind of tricky to understand and tackle as well is going to be multicollinearity. So this one is a topic on its own, and there's a lot of literature on this as well, and there are various methods to solve this. But in a nutshell, I'll give you what problem is. So when we're looking at MMM, let's say we have 2 channels. We have the radio, and then let's say we also have TV, which kind of follows the pattern of radio. And on the y-axis over here, we're looking at the spend data, and this is time, maybe week 1, week 2, and so on. Now, because the MMM is basically looking at the patterns and trying to attribute those patterns to sales and come up with some coefficients, if we look at a chart like this, it's kind of tricky to isolate what each one means and what kind of effect each one had on the sales. So there are various, this is a very common problem. There are various techniques to solve this, and you can go in as deep as you want with advanced modeling and so on. There's things like regularization, residualization. Is this like a linear multicollinearity or like a non-linear multicollinearity? And if we do find there's a correlation in this case, it's probably very high correlation. What do you do then? What kind of metrics can you use to quantify that? So things like VIF. And once you have figured out all these things, do you just go with like regularization or combined channels, which it has its own problems? Do you go for like PCA? There's so many different techniques, and I'll probably make a video on this trying to simplify this for you. But know that there is this problem. So if you're doing MMM by yourself or if you're using a vendor, always check how they can help you with this multicollinearity problem, and try to get as much as information on this as possible. And then the next one that's kind of tricky as well is what is called as attribution windows. Let me actually make some room over here. So yeah, this is a tricky one to understand and tackle as well. So the problem over here is if you take a channel, let's say for TV, TV has some effect. Like after a week of watching it, you probably still get some sales based on TV. So do you stop at 2 weeks there and say you made like 200K revenue and this was maybe 2x ROI? Do you stop there? Or maybe you notice if you keep that going for, let's say, 8 weeks, now you suddenly see 450K and maybe there is slightly higher ROI of 3x. So which one do you trust now? So of course, TV has some lag effects, but this attribution window is a huge problem, because if you take one time frame and say it's only 2 weeks lag, then you get 2x ROI, and if you say 8 weeks lag, you get 3x ROI. Which one do you trust? So this is kind of a technical problem as well, which you can solve by using various methods. So you can look at, again, simple as what we did, 2 weeks, 8 weeks, and maybe you look at 16 weeks and let's say this drops to 1.5x or even less than that. So you can say, okay, it's the highest is somewhere over here. So you can run many MMMs and try to find it out that way. You can also validate this using experiments. So maybe you ran a specific incrementality test and you found out the exact lag. So you can add that in here as priors. And you can also go and try out different ad stock. So if you remember, ad stock is what determines this lag. And you can try different methods like geometric ad stock or Weibull or delayed geometry and so on. So there are various methods that you can try here as well. But hopefully you get an idea of what the problem is at a very high level. And like always, I'll try and make another video trying to simplify just this concept as well. And then the other one is the saturation misspecification. So we've already looked at what issues we get when we have different lags, but we also have issues when we look at the saturation curve as well. So if you remember, saturation tells you at what spend level you'll get diminishing returns, or the ceiling of your marketing spend on a particular channel. So if you take an example over here, so maybe this was the saturation level that you saw. So let's say this is 200K, right? So from this model, you'll think, okay, I can't spend more than 200K, and then you'll just leave it at that. But you can see some of your competitors are spending like, let's say 2 million. They're all the way up here and they're not saturating. So what's happening? So maybe this was an issue that you could have solved by looking at different saturation methods. Again, here, depending on who your MMM provider is, or if you're doing this by yourself, there's like Hill saturation, there's logistic, there's Stan H, Michaels Menten, and so many other techniques that you can use here. But again, hopefully this gives you a quick high level overview of what the problem is. Again, there are various solutions over here, but we'll get to that in a separate video. And then the final one over here is baseline drift. So you might have seen my other videos and realized that there is something called as baseline sales that your company generates. So if this is baseline sales over here, then you might have some media spend over here and then some external factors over here. So you always have this baseline sales, but the issue is this baseline can drift or change over time, right? So you might notice that your sales might have gone up, but then your marketing spend hasn't gone that much up at all. So do you attribute this to your business is doing just well and this is just a normal trend, or is there any other effect that's happening here? So this is the kind of thing that you want to figure out, is there a baseline drift over time? So if you're looking at 2 years worth of data, is there a drift like that? And again, you can use various statistical methods to look at how you can go about calculating this, like cumulative sum, Kalman filters, rolling windows, and so on. And you can even try different trend lines as well. So just a linear trend or a log or a complex profit model with all sorts of seasonalities, and all these things you can look at and try and figure out what exactly is going on. So there you have it. Those are the most common pitfalls over here. Let me zoom in so you can see this better. So yeah, I divided it into easy and tricky, and hopefully you get some idea on these, and look out for the other videos where I'll try and break down each of these concepts.